That's the new one. I can tell this one is a little bit bigger. Looks like it ballooned up a little bit or something. Okay, so let's try the other old one. That's probably, I don't know what caused that. Maybe wear or something like that, or who knows. Okay, let's put this one over here. This one looks a lot closer, actually. I don't know if you guys can see that on camera, but now that I put it over here, yeah, I don't know. What I should have done was slid it over this thing and jiggled it around and see if there was any kind of a space between the outdrive and the inner diameter of that O-ring. So I didn't do that, but whatever. Okay, so now let's put this one together. Oops, touch that. Let's do a little touch up here. A little bit of extra grease on here. Okay, that's good. Okay, now I want to look at this and make sure that it's in good condition and doesn't have any dirt or anything from this piece of paper and all these screws I was undoing earlier. So let's lube this up real good. Okay. I'm going to put this on the very end of my finger. Drop that right inside there. This is just going to be like the other one. It's going to be sort of temporary at the moment. Okay. Put the bearing on. Guess I'll wipe my fingers off again. I would rather put this thing on last, but I don't know if this outdrive is going to let me do it. It's not. Okay. And now I just touched the grease again. So let me touch it up again. Got a little too much on here now. Okay. Now, I know I have too much on here, so what I'm going to do is wipe some of this off on my towel and use a screwdriver to get some out of this part over here. It's a little bit too much here. It'll just be easier later. Okay. And that's fine. I'm going to start sticking the outdrive in. Turning it carefully. Now I can feel that it already hit the O-ring, but I forgot to put this on, this shim. I guess I could get the Dremel and grind some of that off, but I'm not going to do that. Yeah, this is the problem with doing it this way. Okay, so I'm going to put this gear in here, same as before. Make sure the seal doesn't come out. And really, if the seal comes out, it almost doesn't matter that much because I can just use the gear to push it back on, and I double check that a few times to really make sure that the seal is seated properly and not in at an angle or anything like that. Okay, so spinning the outdrive and spinning this sun gear on here is basically just going around the surface of the seal to make sure it's seated all the way in. Okay, let's check. That looks really good. Okay. But what I'm going to have to do here is the same thing I did on the crown gear side, which is get my rag, which is now getting messier and messier, and pull some of the grease, actually that's not bad at all now, out of here. I'll just do a little bit. You can leave the grease, but the thing is, it's just going to attract more dirt. I want it to be a little bit cleaner. Okay, so that actually looks really, really good there. Okay, now since I pulled it out a little bit, I'm going to go over it again with my gear. Put the gear on there. Matter of fact, this is sitting so high, I could put another gear on there just to be really sure that the outdrive isn't protruding past the end of the gear here. You know, like, is it sticking up too high and preventing me from pushing it down, but I can feel it with my finger, it's okay. Okay. And now when I pull this outdrive out a little bit while pressurizing the gear that way, it's sucking the O-ring further into the diff cup, or at least making sure that it's all the way in. And keeping pressure on the ring that way, and when I push this in, it's not going to let the O-ring come out, and screwing it in helps as well. Okay. So now I know that's going to be in there really good. Go ahead and have a look at that. Okay. Let's put the cross pin in. Through that opening. And there's the hole there. Wipe off my needle nose. Now this one's pulling out a lot of grease there. I can see that. This one's not going to be as easy to clean because of that hole. So I'm going to try and stuff this rag in there. I'll just wrap it around my 2.5 ball end, and the rag will pick up some of that grease. It's not a lot, but may as well wipe up what I can. Okay, now that looks good. Okay, so I'm going to get my little grub screw here, put it on my electric screwdriver, and just wipe it off real quick, and screw it back in. Okay, I can see it's beyond the end point of that, and it has not protruded in yet, which is pretty much where you want to be. I'm going to screw it in just a little further. Let's do it to about there. Okay, so it has not protruded into the interior of the case. It's not going to cause any binding. Okay, so now I'm going to get my silicone oil. I want to put a couple drops into this cup first, just to get any bubbles out of there. And you know what, now that I am remembering, I do need to wipe off the... How am I going to do this here? I do need to wipe off these gears again because they have just a little bit of grease on them. Find a clean part on my rag. That one's good. That one's good. Okay. Oops. Got a piece of lint, I guess, from that rag. Okay, now I know this is gonna not have any bubbles in it, or at least not any big bubbles. Okay, I want to fill up these little grooves here. And that's just the way I do it because I want to make sure that when I rebuild my diffs it's the same every time. Okay, so I'm going to start adding silicone into the diff case. That should be okay for now to start with. I'm going to keep that facing down so I don't start mixing in air bubbles everywhere. Now, I can see there's a couple of air bubbles in here, which I was hoping that was not going to happen. So I'm just going to let these run off to the side. This isn't great for video, waiting for all these air bubbles to pop. I know that. Alright, well, these are going to take their time, aren't they? Okay, well, I guess that's as good as this is going to get. And really, I only see one air bubble that I'd like to get rid of in there. I think for diff performance, that's not going to matter that much. Okay, so I'm going to drop this gear into there, push it down onto the shaft, and I just want to spin the shaft while pushing down with my nail. Yeah, it gets a little messy, but I want to make sure it's seated correctly. Now I'm going to drop in my planetary gears, which I already, wiped the stuff off. Okay, that went in nice. Obviously there's this little flat spot here that needs to match up with the flat spot on the other one, so they can lock together. Okay, looks good. I'll wipe my finger off. Alright, let's put some more oil in there. I want to be sure to put some oil in behind the gear and the wall of the diff case, so there's not an open air pocket there. Just dropped a nice big bubble in there. Oh, that popped already good. Okay, I'm going to keep filling this thing up. This thing barely lets any oil out of this little nipple. Okay, that's probably good there. I'm going to drop this gear in. And you can see there's an air bubble there, but that's... Although I'd like to have no air bubbles in here, I really don't think that a couple of air bubbles in the diff is going to make a difference like it can in the shocks. But this one is moving pretty quickly, so maybe I'll just let it come out. Okay, so that one came out. I can see there's another one behind this gear that's trying to come out and pop. There it goes. Okay, so that's good now. Let's drop this other gear in there. There might be a couple other little air bubbles in there. I did see those, but I don't think those are going to be anything to worry about. Okay, that diff is pretty much full there. As before, I do like filling in these little grooves on here. And even though this is a lot of silicone in here, and this diff is basically completely full, matter of fact, I am going to actually top it off right around the edges here. These Hot Bodies diffs seal so well that they really don't leak. I mean, I know this one did leak a little bit, like I showed you guys, but once everything's in there right, it should be fine. Okay, so that looks good. Now the only other space I need to compensate for is this stuff here. The outdrive that protrudes in and the cross shaft. And this is kind of like an eyeballing situation where I'm going to just dig out what I think the amount of fluid that would be displaced is, so it doesn't just straight up overflow. And that's it. Okay, so I'm going to run my finger around here, make sure there's... I'm not necessarily wiping off the edge of the case, I'm just smearing whatever fluid is around there uniformly. Okay, and I always put this gasket, these gaskets, I reuse them so much, and that's not the side that it usually leaks from. It usually leaks from the other side anyway. I just put the same side down so it conforms to the body of the diff case. This one here, I don't know how it got grease on there. Let me wipe that off. Okay, now I'm just going to line up this cross shaft, center that, with that shaft there. I mean with the groove in the